The Great Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as Admiral Kelthrin raised his 6 arms in triumph. Representatives from 847 species watched as holographic displays showed the final, Verdak's hive ship exploding into brilliant fragments. After 3,000 years of terror, the parasitic hive mind that had consumed 17 star systems was finally gone. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Kelthrin announced, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into thousands of languages simultaneously. The greatest threat our galaxy has ever known is extinct. We are safe. The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had fought the Varthax for generations wept with relief. The war had cost trillions of lives, but it was over. Peace had finally arrived. In the archives far below the celebration, Archivist Melis worked alone among towers of data storage. The Vorthax vessels had been destroyed, but their information cores were preserved for study. Melis, a keeper whose species lived for documentation and knowledge, believed even enemies could teach valuable lessons. She had been sorting through genetic memories for weeks when she found something strange. The Vorthax kept records in their very DNA, passing knowledge through generations of their hive. Deep in these memories, older than any other records, was a reference that made no sense. The translation kept showing the same phrase, original threat. The Vorthax had fled from something that had nearly destroyed them completely. The memories described this entity with words that roughly translated to the persistent ones, or those who adapt beyond reason. Melis read the files 3 times to be certain. The Vorthax hadn't come to this dimension to conquer. They had come here to escape. They were running away from something that terrified them, more than death itself. She brought her findings to the council immediately. Surely, this was important enough to interrupt the celebrations. But when she presented her evidence, the council members barely listened. The Vorthax were liars and deceivers, one representative said dismissively. This is propaganda, nothing more. If such a threat existed, we would have encountered it, another added. We have mapped 40% of the galaxy. We have made contact with nearly 1,000 spacefaring civilizations. There is nothing out there we don't know about. Kelthrin himself addressed her concerns with what seemed like patience but felt like condescension. Archivist Melis, your dedication is admirable. But the war is over. The threat is gone. Please, don't waste the Council's time with ghost stories from a dead enemy. Melis returned to the archives, dismissed and embarrassed. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the Council had made a terrible mistake. The Vorthax fear in those memories had been real. Whatever they were running from was still out there. 3 weeks later, on the far edge of explored space, Research Outpost Theta 9 detected an anomaly. Science Officer Prith stared at his instruments in confusion. A vessel was approaching at faster-than-light speeds, but its signature matched no known civilization. Get me a visual, he ordered his assistant. When the image appeared on screen, Prith felt his breathing sacs contract. The ship was small, almost primitive in design. Its hull was patchwork metal held together with visible welds. The propulsion system defied every principle of established physics. It shouldn't work at all, yet it was accelerating at rates that would turn any known biological organism into liquid. Try to make contact, Prith said. Though his voice trembled slightly, the communications officer sent out standard greetings in the 50 most common galactic languages. For several minutes, there was no response. Then the ship's trajectory changed. It was coming directly toward them. A voice crackled through their speakers, speaking in a language the translator struggled to process. After a moment, the words came through clearly. Hello. This is Voyager 7 of the United Earth Colonial Fleet. We're receiving your transmission. How wonderful to finally meet someone out here. We've been searching for so long. The bridge crew looked at each other in alarm. The voice sounded happy, almost childlike in its enthusiasm. But the translator had picked up something else in the language patterns. This species had thousands of distinct vocal variations, suggesting either multiple subspecies or something more concerning, a recently unified world with many competing groups. "Please identify your species and origin," Prith responded, keeping his voice steady. "We're human. From Earth. Third planet in the Sol System. Orion arm of the Milky Way. We've been exploring for about 23 years now since we figured out the whole faster-than-light thing. Is this your first time meeting us? We're pretty excited about first contact." 23 years. Prith felt cold despite his thick fur. Most species took thousands of years to develop safe FTL technology. Many never achieved it at all. Yet these humans claim to have done it in what was barely a moment in galactic terms. "Please stand by," Prith said. "We are contacting our central authority. Welcome to known space." After the communication ended, Prith immediately sent an urgent message to the Council. The response came back within hours. A diplomatic team would be dispatched to make formal contact. This was considered a routine first contact mission, nothing unusual. But Prith couldn't stop thinking about that ship. Its crude construction, its impossible speed, and most disturbing of all, the multiple weapons ports he had spotted along its hull. This was supposed to be an exploration vessel, yet it was armed better than most military ships in the sector. He pulled up the transmission again and studied the markings on the ship's hull. Below the designation Voyager 7 was a symbol, a blue and green sphere wrapped in white clouds, with a smaller gray sphere beside it. Their homeworld, presumably. And surrounding it all was text in their native script. The translator processed it slowly. "Per aspera ad astra. Through hardships to the stars." Prith filed his report and tried to dismiss the unease growing in his core. The Council would handle this. They always did. But as he looked at that primitive ship capable of speeds it shouldn't achieve, armed for threats it shouldn't expect, crewed by beings eager to meet strangers in a dangerous galaxy, he couldn't help but remember Archivist Maluz and her warnings about an original threat, and he wondered if the Council had just made first contact with something far more dangerous than the Bethax had ever been. Ambassador Torrent had conducted 47 first contact missions in his long career. He considered himself an expert at evaluating new species and determining their place in galactic society. The humans would be no different. Or so he thought when he accepted the assignment. His ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol System, and immediately every alarm on his bridge began screaming. 12 weapons locks had activated on his vessel within seconds of arrival. "This is Ambassador Torrent of the Galactic Council," he transmitted quickly. "We come in peace for diplomatic relations." The weapons locks disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. A cheerful human voice responded almost immediately. "Sorry about that. Automated defense system. You can never be too careful out here. Welcome to Earth's solar system, Ambassador. We're really excited to meet you." Torrent tried to calm his racing hearts. As his ship moved deeper into the system, he studied his instruments with growing disbelief. The humans had achieved faster-than-light travel only 23 cycles ago. That should have meant a handful of exploration vessels at most. Instead, his sensors detected 17 colony worlds, 43 deep space installations, and hundreds of ships moving between them. How is this possible? His science officer whispered. No species expands this quickly. When they arrived at Earth, Torrent was greeted by Secretary General Maria Santos, a human female with dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She smiled warmly and extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Ambassador Torrent, welcome to Earth. We've been hoping to meet other civilizations for so long. Please, We have so much to discuss. The diplomatic meetings went smoothly. Too smoothly, Torrent thought. The humans were friendly, almost naive about galactic politics. They offered to share their technology freely, discussed their culture openly, and seemed genuinely interested in learning about other species. They signed trade agreements without haggling, accepted council regulations without complaint, and asked for nothing in return except knowledge and friendship. But Torrent noticed things. Small things that added up to a disturbing picture. Every human he met, whether diplomat or scientist or simple worker, moved with an awareness of their surroundings that spoke of constant vigilance. Their buildings had multiple exits. Their computers had backup systems for the backup systems. And every ship, even civilian transport vessels, carried weapons. Why are your cargo ships armed? He asked Secretary General Santos during a private dinner. She looked surprised by the question. Well, you never know what's out there. Space is dangerous. We'd rather be prepared and not need weapons than need them and not have them. But you are in your own space. What danger do you expect here? Santos smiled, but Torrent saw something flicker in her eyes. Ambassador, humans have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. It's kept us alive this long. The council's xenobiologists arrived to study human physiology and returned with reports that Torrent read 3 times before he believed them. Humans evolved on a planet classified in council records as unsuitable for colonization. Earth had extreme temperature variations, dangerous weather patterns, and predators that could kill most known species with ease. Humans were persistence hunters. Their bodies could run for hours without stopping, could survive on minimal water, could heal from injuries that would kill most species. Their immune systems were aggressive enough to fight off most known pathogens. They could eat an absurdly wide variety of foods, including things that were poisonous to other species. But the most disturbing finding was about their psychology. The human brain was built around problem-solving under stress. They actually thought more clearly when in danger. Their bodies produced chemicals that increased focus and strength when threatened. They were, in essence, designed to thrive in crisis situations. The historical records were even worse. Humans had fought 12,000 wars before achieving spaceflight. They had 200 separate nations, 6 major religious groups, and 4,000 distinct languages. They should have destroyed themselves 1,000 times over. Instead, they had unified for space exploration in less than 2 generations. How did you achieve peace? Torrent asked Santos during their final meeting. She laughed, a sound that seemed genuine but somehow sad. Ambassador, we haven't achieved peace. We still argue, still compete, still disagree on almost everything. But we realize something important. There's so much out here that's not us. We figured we should work together to face it. Besides, having a common goal helps us remember we're all human, no matter our differences. Torrent returned to his ship troubled. He sent his report to the council with a note of caution. Humans were friendly, yes, but they were also the most dangerous species he had ever encountered. Not because they were aggressive, but because they weaponized everything, including cooperation itself. Meanwhile, Archivist Melis had continued her research despite the council's dismissal. Deep in the Verthax genetic memories, she found the full account of their encounter with humanity 50,000 years ago. The Verthax had discovered Earth. They found primitive humans using stone tools, living in small tribes, perfect hosts for parasitic invasion. The Verthax infected a tribe of 30 humans to test their suitability. What happened next had been burned into Verthax genetic memory as a warning to all future generations. The infected humans had been killed by other humans within days. But the humans didn't stop there. They tracked the Verthax to their hidden ship. They studied the bodies of the infected, learned the parasite's weaknesses, and developed countermeasures. all while using nothing but stone tools and fire. The Vothaks fled. Out of thousands of species they had tested, only humanity had responded to infection not with fear and panic, but with immediate, coordinated, and frighteningly effective violence. The Vothaks realized something terrifying. Humans didn't just fight threats. They learned from them, adapted to them, and eliminated them with extreme prejudice. The genetic memory included a final note, written in chemical markers that translated to something like absolute certainty. These creatures will one day spread among the stars. When they do, nothing will be able to stop them. They do not accept defeat. They do not accept limitation. They simply adapt until they win. Avoid them at all costs. Melis sent her findings to Torrance directly, bypassing the council. When he read them, he felt his blood chill. The humans had been friendly and helpful during his entire visit. But he remembered Secretary General Santos's words. Hope for the best. Prepare for the worst. The humans weren't preparing for possible threats. They were preparing for inevitable ones. They assumed conflict was coming because in their experience, it always did. And they met every threat the same way, by learning, adapting, and surviving. Torrance added Melis's findings to his report and marked it urgent. The council needed to understand what they were dealing with. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were the thing that had made the galaxy's most dangerous parasite flee in terror. And the worst part? The humans didn't even remember it. That encounter 50,000 years ago was lost to their prehistory. They had become this dangerous completely on their own, through nothing but evolution on a death world that punished weakness and rewarded persistence. The council was about to learn something the Vothaks had known for millennia. Humanity wasn't just another threat. They were the final threat, the one that ended all others, either by befriending them or by eliminating them. Torrance just hoped the council would be wise enough to choose friendship. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in 300 years. Every species sent their highest representatives. The subject of discussion was simple and terrifying: what to do about humanity. Admiral Kelthron stood at the center of the chamber, his expression grave. We have reviewed Ambassador Torrance's report and Archivist Melis's findings. The evidence is clear. Humanity represents a threat unlike anything we have faced before. They have done nothing hostile, argued Representative Thilwyn of the Pelthrin Consortium. In fact, they have been helpful and generous. Why should we fear them? Because of what they are capable of, Kelthron replied. He activated a holographic display showing human history. In the 23 cycles since achieving faster than light travel, they have fought 3 wars. Not against us, not against unknown aliens, but against themselves. The chamber fell silent as the data appeared. The colonial separation conflict, the Mars independence movement, the Titan resource dispute. Each war had lasted less than 1 cycle. Each had ended with the fighting factions reintegrating stronger than before. They use war as evolution, Kelthron continued. They fight, learn, adapt, and emerge more unified. No other species does this. Most species that fight civil wars destroy themselves or splinter permanently. Humans do the opposite. The Qatari representative, a crystalline being named Zeth, spoke with a voice like breaking glass. I propose immediate quarantine. We limit their expansion, monitor their technology, and ensure they never become powerful enough to threaten the Council. That's extreme, Thulwyn protested. They could be valuable allies. Or they could replace us entirely, Zeth countered. The Vothaks fled from them when humans still use stone tools. What will humans be capable of in 1,000 cycles? 10,000? They adapt faster than any species on record. We must act while we still can. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to exploit humanity as mercenaries. Others wanted to integrate them peacefully. Still others, like Zeth, wanted containment or worse. Ambassador Torrance argued passionately against any hostile action, but he could see the fear in the chamber. The council was terrified, and terrified beings made dangerous decisions. The vote was close, but containment won. Human space would be surrounded by monitoring stations. Their expansion would be limited to their current 17 colonies. Their technology would be regulated and inspected. It wasn't war, but it wasn't peace either. Torrance resigned immediately. "You're making a terrible mistake," he told the council. "You're treating them like enemies. You'll make them into what you fear most." But the decision was made. The Ashkari fleet moved to establish the blockade. Secretary General Santos received the news in her office on Earth. She read the council's declaration 3 times, her face expressionless. Her advisors waited nervously. "What do we do?" asked General Zhang, head of Earth's military forces. "Do we fight?" Santos was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. "No, we comply. Completely." "What?" Zhang looked shocked. "They're putting us in a cage." "Yes, they are," Santos agreed. "Because they're afraid. And if we fight, we prove them right. So we accept every restriction, every inspection, every limitation. We show them we're not the threat they fear." "And if they're wrong about us?" asked Dr. Okonkwo. The chief science advisor. Santos smiled slightly. "Then we have time to prepare for what's really out there." Humanity's response shocked the galaxy. They accepted every term without complaint. They pulled back their exploration fleets. They opened their facilities for inspection. They redirected their expansion inward, terraforming marginal worlds within their permitted space. They focused on art, culture, and science. For 50 cycles, humanity seemed to accept their containment. They traded peacefully with council species. They participated in cultural exchanges. They caused no trouble at all. The council began to relax. Perhaps they had misunderstood. Perhaps humanity wasn't the threat they feared. The monitoring stations grew complacent. The blockade became more symbolic than practical. Life returned to normal. Then the Vorthax returned. It started with dimensional rifts opening across the galaxy. Not small ones like before, but massive tears in spacetime itself. The Vorthax poured through in numbers that made the previous invasion look like a scouting party. Billions of them, evolved and adapted after millennia in another dimension. They had been preparing, learning, growing stronger, and now they had come back to finish what they started. The Council's fleets, unprepared after 50 cycles of peace, fell like leaves in a storm. Species that had survived the First War found themselves facing extinction in days. Entire star systems went dark. The Vorthax were faster, stronger, and more coordinated than before. Admiral Kelthrin, now old and tired, watched his empire crumble. The Ashkari had been the backbone of the Council's military. Now they were barely holding their own territory. He received casualty reports that made him want to weep. A transmission came through on a priority channel. It was Secretary General Santos, though she looked older than Kelthrin remembered. "Admiral, we would like to help." Kelthrin almost laughed. "Help? You have 17 worlds and a limited fleet. We appreciate the gesture, but we have more than that," Santos interrupted gently. "We've been busy these past 50 cycles. Will you accept our assistance?" The Council had no choice. They were losing badly. Any help was better than extinction. "Yes," Kelthrin said. "Please." What happened next would be remembered as the 30 days. That changed everything. Human fleets appeared at every major battlefront simultaneously. But these weren't the primitive ships the Council remembered. These vessels moved faster than anything in known space. Their weapons cut through Varthak's ships like they were paper. Their shields absorbed damage that would have destroyed Council vessels. Human commanders took control of the defense, integrating Council forces with impossible efficiency. They seemed to know exactly where the Varthaks would strike next, exactly how they would attack, exactly what weaknesses to exploit. How? Kelthrin asked the DeSantis during a brief communication. How do you have this technology? We've been monitoring you. Santis's expression was sad, but not apologetic. You monitored what we let you see, Admiral. Did you really think we would accept containment and do nothing? We turned inward not in defeat, but in preparation. Every restricted technology became a research project. Every peaceful cycle was spent studying your weaknesses and Varthak's records. We knew they would come back. We've been waiting 50 cycles for this. The truth hit Kelthrin like a physical blow. The humans had never been contained. They had simply learned patience. They had used the time to build, to prepare, to become exactly what the Council feared most. And now they were saving the galaxy. Human soldiers fought with a ferocity that terrified both allies and enemies. They didn't retreat. They didn't panic. When a Varthak's parasite infected a human squad, the other humans didn't flee. They executed their infected comrades immediately and kept fighting. The Varthaks, facing an enemy that refused to be intimidated, began to falter. For the first time in their long existence, they encountered a species that scared them more than they scared it. 30 days after the humans entered the war, the Varthaks were defeated. Not pushed back, not retreating. Defeated completely. The dimensional rifts were sealed. The invasion was over. The cost had been enormous. Millions of Council lives lost. But the galaxy survived. And it survived because of humanity. The silence in the Council chamber was heavy enough to crush stone. Representatives from 847 species sat in their seats, processing what had just happened. The Varthaks were gone, truly extinct this time. The galaxy was saved. But the cost of that salvation sat before them in the form of a question no one wanted to ask. What do we do about the humans now? Admiral Kelthrin stood slowly, his 6 arms trembling slightly. He was old now, tired from decades of service and the recent war. But his voice was steady when he spoke. We owe humanity our survival. Without them, we would all be dead or worse. But we must address the reality we now face. Humanity is the most powerful military force in the galaxy. They possess technology beyond our understanding. And they achieve this while under our containment. The question before us is simple. What happens next? Secretary General Santos sat in the human delegation area, flanked by military and scientific advisors. She looked calm, but Kelthrin could see the tension in her shoulders. She knew this moment would come. The humans deceived us, Zeth of the Qatari said, his crystalline form glowing with barely contained anger. They pretended to accept our restrictions while secretly building an empire. How can we trust them now? We never lied, Santos replied quietly. We followed every rule you gave us. We stayed within our borders. We allowed inspections. We simply didn't volunteer information you didn't ask for. You wanted to contain us, so we showed you what you wanted to see. You manipulated us, another representative accused. Santos nodded slowly. Yes, we did. Because you were afraid of us before you even knew us. You saw us as a threat and treated us accordingly. What choice did we have? Accept permanent inferiority? Watch you fear us until that fear turned to aggression. We've seen that story before in our own history. It never ends well. So what do you want now? Kelthrin asked. You have the power. You could demand anything. You could take control of the Council by force if you wished. The chamber went deadly quiet. Every being present knew this was true. Human ships had proven themselves vastly superior during the war. If humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy, no one could stop them. Santos stood and walked to the center of the chamber. She looked small, surrounded by so many different species, some twice her size. But her voice carried to every corner of the vast space. 50 cycles ago, you asked us what we wanted. We said friendship and knowledge. That hasn't changed. We don't want to rule you. We don't want to replace you. We don't want to replace you. We just want to exist without being treated like weapons waiting to go off. Pretty words, Zeth said bitterly. But words are cheap. You've proven you're the apex predator the Varthax feared. Why should we believe you won't eventually devour us like you devoured them? Santos was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Because we learned something you haven't yet. Being the strongest doesn't mean being alone. Humanity fought ourselves for thousands of years before we figured that out. We nearly destroyed our own planet multiple times. We had weapons that could have ended all life on Earth, and we came close to using them. She gestured around the chamber. But we survived because we learned that strength isn't just about power. It's about cooperation. It's about protecting those around you so they can protect you in return. Yes, we're dangerous. Yes, we adapt faster than other species. Yes, we can be terrifying when threatened. But we're also the species that will throw ourselves in front of danger to save others. During the war, human soldiers died protecting Council personnel, she continued. Human scientists shared their discoveries freely. Human commanders integrated your forces, not as subordinates, but as equals. We could have let you fall and then claimed the galaxy for ourselves. We didn't. That should tell you everything you need to know about our intentions. Ambassador Torrance, who had been sitting quietly in the observers section, stood and spoke for the first time. I resigned from the council 50 cycles ago because I believed you were making a mistake. I still believe that. But I also believe humanity has proven themselves. Not as conquerors, but as protectors. He turned to address the full council. The Vorthax called them those who adapt beyond reason. We feared what that meant. But adaptation isn't just about warfare. Humans adapted to our containment by becoming patient. They adapted to our fear by becoming trustworthy. They adapted to our weakness by becoming our strength. That's what makes them dangerous, yes, but it's also what makes them invaluable. The debate continued for hours. Some representatives wanted to maintain restrictions. Others wanted to grant humans limited council membership. A few, like Zeth, wanted to find some way to limit human power even now, though no one could suggest how. Finally, Admiral Kelthron called for a vote on full council membership for humanity, with all rights, privileges, and responsibilities that entailed. It was the ultimate test. Would the council accept humans as true equals, or would they try to maintain some form of control? The vote took only minutes. When the results appeared, Kelthron read them aloud with a voice that shook slightly. 847 votes cast. 847 votes in favor. The decision is unanimous. Humanity is granted full council status, effective immediately. The chamber erupted, not with celebration exactly, but with relief. The decision was made. For better or worse, humanity was now truly part of galactic civilization. Santos bowed her head slightly. Thank you. We won't let you down. Later, after the official ceremonies and diplomatic pleasantries, Kelthron met with Santos and Fleet Admiral Chung privately on a council station orbiting a world the Vorthax had ravaged. They stood at an observation window, looking down at the scarred planet below. You knew we would restrict you from the beginning, Kelthron said quietly. You planned for it. Chun, a tall woman with gray hair and steady eyes, nodded. We knew you would fear us. We've been the feared ones before, in our own history. Some of our nations spent decades afraid of each other, building weapons to destroy the world just in case. We understood what fear does to people. So we gave you time to learn you needed us more than you feared us. That's manipulation, Kelthrin said, but without anger. That's survival, Santos corrected gently. Admiral, the Verthax weren't your final threat. They were just the first one you couldn't handle alone. There will be others. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers we haven't even imagined yet. Humanity can help you face those threats, but only if you let us be partners rather than prisoners. Kelthrin looked at the two human leaders and felt something he hadn't expected: hope. And if we had voted against you? If we had tried to maintain the containment? Chun's expression hardened slightly. Then we would have had a problem. We're willing to be partners, Admiral. We're eager to be friends, but we won't be victims. Not again, not ever. The unspoken threat hung in the air. Humanity would accept equality, or they would take it. The Council had chosen wisely. The Verthax were right about you, Kelthrin said after a long silence. You are those who adapt beyond reason. You terrify me, if I'm being honest. Santos smiled sadly. We terrify ourselves sometimes, Admiral. But we've learned to channel that into something productive. The age of threats hasn't ended. It's just changed. Now, instead of fighting each other, we can face what's out there together. She extended her hand, that simple human gesture of greeting and agreement. Kelthrin looked at it for a moment, then reached out with one of his 6 arms and took it. The handshake of two species. Two very different paths to the stars. But for the first time, walking forward together. The galaxy's age of isolation had ended. The age of humanity had begun. And the universe would never be the same.